I'm Dina Hollywood, manager of the San Ramon and Doherty Station Libraries, and on behalf of Contra Costa County Library, want to welcome you to tonight's forum. We've worked closely with the League of Women Voters, the County Election Department, and CCTV to bring this program to our community. It will stream live on Facebook and will be available online after the program on the Library and County Election Department websites, as well as the League Voters Edge website. Please welcome me in joining our please join me in welcoming our moderator for this evening, Ann Flynn, who will be moderating the Assembly District 16 portion. Ann is the immediate past president of the League of Women Voters of Diablo Valley and has years of moderating experience. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you, Dina. Our forum this evening presents the two candidates running for California Assembly District 16. The League is a nonpartisan organization and does not support or oppose any candidate. We are here tonight as part of our key mission to educate and inform voters. And I do not live in the Assembly District, so I cannot vote for either of them. Just now, each candidate has pulled a number to determine opening speaking order. And Rebecca Bauer-Kahan will be first. Closing statements will be in the reverse order, so Katherine Baker will be first. Our rebuttal rules tonight are a bit different. If a candidate talks about her opponent, that opponent will have an automatic rebuttal of 1 minute added to her next speaking period. We hope this will encourage candidates to talk about her own record, not her opponent. To our audience here, remember, if you have a question you would like to ask both candidates, please write it on a 3x5 card and hand it to a volunteer who will get it up to me. Questions will be screened to avoid duplicates. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer the question. Personal attacks are not permitted. Each speaker will be timed, and we will give everyone a 15-second warning time. The timers are in the front row, so hold up 15 seconds. That's your early warning, and then the red card means you're finished. And you can finish your sentence or your thought. We'll be generous about that. Please turn off your cell phones now if you haven't yet done so. And please, no unauthorized recordings or videos. I want to remind you not to cheer or applaud any statement. Now we'll proceed with 1 minute opening statements, beginning with Rebecca Bauer-Kahan.
Thank you. I want to thank Ann and the League of Women Voters for putting on this forum, the library for helping coordinate, all of you for being here, both in person and viewers at home. And I want to thank Katherine Baker for joining me tonight. I'm Rebecca Bauer-Kahan, and I'm running to be your Assemblywoman. I'm an environmental lawyer, a law professor, a mom of 3, and the granddaughter of refugees. My grandparents came over here as refugees in 1939, fleeing Nazi-occupied Germany, and we had the opportunity to live the American dream. And I know firsthand what that means, and I've spent every day of my adult life working to give back to this country that gave my family life and this community that I cherish. In 2016, I stepped up and I coordinated the legal response at SFO in response to the Trump travel ban. And now I'm running to be your Assemblywoman to represent the values that all of us share in Sacramento on the issues important to us, like protecting our community from gun violence and funding our public schools, providing strong transportation infrastructure, protecting a woman's right to choose, and battling climate change. I will never waver. And I'm excited to talk tonight and answer all of the questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. For the next 25 minutes or so, I'll ask questions. I'll do my best to ensure...
I think I get a minute, too, for introduction. Is that okay?
I apologize.
That's all right. Don't worry
Katherine Baker.
Every event's got to have at least one little hiccup, so that's our hiccup, so no worries about it.
It's over now.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you to the League of Women Voters, the library, and everyone for coming on a work night. For us, it's a school night, and for being so thoughtful about elections and ballots and what affects our communities. I'm Katherine Baker. I'm a sophomore. I'm in my second term as Assembly member representing our Assembly district. It has been a great honor for a little over 3.5 years now, representing our community in the State Assembly. I'm a almost 20-year resident of the Assembly District. My family lives in Dublin and have worked as an attorney representing small family businesses and nonprofits for over 20 years here in this area, and have been honored to serve this district and find that the approach that I try to take to leadership is so much more effective than what we typically see. And that's an approach that is bipartisan, independent from partisan bickering and special interests, and actually gets real results for our community by putting our people first. And I'm very, very eager to visit about that tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Katherine Baker. Now, we're going to proceed with the question period. It'll be about 25 minutes that I'll be asking questions from each candidate, and I will attempt to give everybody equal time and not forget anybody. But do remind me if I do. So the first question goes to Katherine Baker. And I must say we have a lot of questions, and they are very good ones. So the first one is from the audience. As a high school student concerned about gun safety, what do you believe is the best way to continue to push for strong gun control laws in California?
Yeah, absolutely. And myself, I'm a parent of high school students, and I have received that phone call that every parent dreads. And that's from the community asking, do you know where your kids are and are they safe? Because there was a threat and a lockdown at my kids' high school just last fall. It was about a year ago. And so it has made me proud to vote for common sense, real gun reform legislation again and again and again, expanding the assault weapons ban in California, expanding and strengthening our background check system, expanding the ban on guns in schools. You'll hear a lot about that over the coming weeks. I was proud to support the Brady campaign to do that. And what's very important is we helped, and I co-authored a bill, to found the Gun Violence Research Center at the University of California at Davis. This is when the federal government was not acting because it was too partisan. I was honored to be a co-author of that bill. And we need to rely more on science-based, peer-reviewed research that's coming out of that center to continue our good gun control policy in California. And there's more work to do on that.
Thank you. Rebecca Bauer-Kahan.
Yeah, as a mom of kids in our public schools, I understand every day the fear that one feels when they drop their kids off and hope that they'll be safe when you pick them up at the end of the day. And it's why I have committed to never waver in my support of gun violence prevention. And I'm proud to have the Moms Demand Action Gun Sense distinction to stand with gun violence prevention 100% of the time. In my local community, I've worked to start an organization called Safe Arinda to work to bring safe storage laws for firearms into our local community. And so we need to do a couple things in California to make us safe. One is we have incredible gun violence laws here in California, some of the best in the nation. So we need to make sure we're working to enforce them every day so that those laws are effective. And then secondly, there's more we can do. We know that the safe storage of guns makes us safer, both from accidental shootings, suicides, and from when they get into the wrong hands. And so we need to work to make that statewide and not just community by community. Thank you.
Thank you. Another gun control question. So more specifically, another round, we do have among the strongest gun control laws in the country, but there is more that we can do. What's your position on banning silencers, gun stocks, and other dangerous firearm modifications? So, Rebecca?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, this is an issue on which I will never waver. There's no question that we are safer when people don't have access to those kind of tools. I mean, you think about some of the worst shootings in our community, and silencers would have made it more deadly, right? And so we need to continue to make sure that we don't have those in California, which means working to protect from things coming across our state borders, and enforcing the laws here in California. And, I just continue to stand by 100% gun violence prevention to make sure that we are safe, our kids are safe at work, at concerts, at schools, everywhere we want to be.
Katherine?
Great. I was proud to support the legislation that Governor Brown just signed a few weeks ago that bans bump stocks. That was the kind of tool that allowed the shooter in Las Vegas to actually make the firearm even more dangerous and lethal. Proud to be a part of doing that. And also am proud that I have an F with the NRA, and this is as a Republican. Proud to be the only Republican in the state of California and possibly the country who has carried legislation sponsored by the Brady campaign, signed by a Democratic governor, That is part of what we need, is more bipartisanship. I'd love to see the national level do more of what we've done in California, but it starts by setting an example to make sure that happens. Also, was pleased to support legislation that made sure that you have to have a minimum age for purchasing long guns of 21 years. That was the requirement for purchase a handgun. Now it's the requirement to purchase a long gun in California. And to make sure that we have expansive background checks. So it's not just when you purchase a gun, it's when you have ammunition, and it's when you lend it to someone else or sell it to someone else in a private sale. There is more work to do. Those are specific measures I've been honored to support.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move to health care, which is another huge issue in California, in the country. Do you support single payer? And if you do, how would you fund it? If you don't, how would you encourage affordability and access to more people? So, Katherine?
All right, I'll try to do that in 60 seconds. And I start just with a quick personal background. So I very much have been supportive of making sure that the ACA is implemented in California, and it's been extremely successful in California. We only have about 7% of our population that wants insurance and hasn't been able to get it. And so one of the things I think we need to focus on is that 7%. Don't completely uproot the healthcare programs and healthcare insurance that so many Californians already have. Many are covered by Covered California and private insurance, and I think that's important. But the reality is they've become less and less affordable. We've seen double-digit increase in our premiums in California, which is why we need to make sure folks who have insurance are able to find a doctor. Often the doctors and the healthcare providers don't have the reimbursement rates that allow them to be seen, and that's important to do as well. Single payer healthcare, just to make sure that I answer the question as well, is $400 billion a year, according to the Legislative Analyst's Office. That's twice the state budget. So I don't think that's the path for us to take, especially from a state that operates the DMV poorly.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Thank you. You know, I've had family members who've gone bankrupt over healthcare. I understand the importance of healthcare to all Californians and all Americans. And so it is absolutely something we need to work towards, providing healthcare for all Californians. And, you know, the single payer bill that was before the legislature this year was not, we weren't able to fund it. It would have bankrupted our state, and we can't do things that are not feasible and that we can't afford as a state. However, as the 5th largest economy in the world, we need to be working towards providing health care for all Californians. And so what does that mean and what does it look like? We need to do it in a sustainable, affordable way, in a way that makes it successful, so that just like Massachusetts was able to model the ACA and it worked its way out to the nation, we can be a leader for the nation in health care. And so the first step in that is making sure we're driving health care costs down, standing up to the special interests that are stopping us from having transparency in healthcare costs, pharmaceutical costs, making sure that healthcare is affordable, and then creating a pathway to getting to healthcare for all.
Thank you very much. Now, I heard the DMV mentioned. Someone has a question about it. Do you have ideas for improving the quality and speed of service at the DMV? Phone lines, office. We're not going to talk about registering voters because I realize that's beyond our capability. So,
and
Rebecca,
as well.
Do you have any ideas of how to improve the DMV?
Yes, although I know that registering voters is a wonderful project of the League, so it's something we should talk about. Yes, so the DMV. You know, when I first read about the private office at the Capitol that some of the legislators are able to use, so they're not going to the DMV and taking them out of the system that each of us has to live in and day out, it's things like that we need to end. Our legislators need to be experiencing exactly what we're experiencing, so they know the ins and outs of what our citizenry is working with and making sure to make it better. So that's one thing, is closing down those kind of special projects for legislators. And then how do we improve the experience? Obviously, with real IDs, we have an overwhelmed DMV and one that needs help. And so, you know, the work the legislature has been doing to look into that problem, of find real solutions and make sure we're funding and creating DMVs that are working for all Californians is an important piece of work that needs to continue and be a priority, because you know, this kind of system that we have to live with day in and day out is what makes California work for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Katherine.
And been right there in those lines in Pleasanton when I've had to have an ID replaced, and also my kids are eventually going to have their permit, so this is very much on my mind. As a member of the Transportation Committee, I've been part of the efforts to call on the state to have a nonpartisan, independent audit of the DMV. That's what we need. Take the politics out of this and look at what has actually gone wrong at the DMV. and what solutions we can have that show better access for Californians to get better service. There's so many things, for example, that the AAA is able to do, that we don't all have to have it at the Department of Motor Vehicles. We ought to open up opportunities for people to be able to access what they need from the DMV in more than one location. Unfortunately, that state audit was one that was killed on a party line vote. Almost a party line vote. And instead, the hands that this was put into was the own administration. I think we desperately need a nonpartisan, independent state auditor to bring accountability to the DMV and consequences. When the director of the DMV just testified that 30% of their employees aren't showing up on any given day, so they're using a recipe competition and wellness classes, we need to completely revamp the DMV and have been part of the effort to do that.
Thank you. Now, another local issue for us is BART. It's a critical mass transit system, we all know. This involves labor, though. What's your position on banning BART strikes during contract negotiations, sympathy strikes, and other BART worker strikes outside of negotiations? Katherine?
Great question, because when BART does have strikes, it brings the entire Bay Area to a grinding halt. And that affects our ability to get to work, school, medical appointments, and it also affects our economy. $73 million were lost a day during the Bay Area strikes in 2013. The very first bill I introduced as an assembly member was to, the library's closing soon.
We'll be done. It's okay.
You got it.
Sorry.
We will go past the closing of the library.
So we'll.
Thank you. The very first bill I introduced when I became an assembly member was to end BART strikes. And that's in a way that's fair to workers and to riders. And it focuses on how BART strikes actually happen. BART workers already agree to a no-strike clause in their contract every single time. What happens is the contract expires. They continue to be paid under that contract and have all their benefits. But what happens is the workers say, well, I don't want to have to honor the no-strike clause. My bill said, if the contract's expired, and you've already agreed not to strike, you won't have a no-strike clause imposed on you. But if you're continuing to get your benefits, you have to abide by the whole contract, including the no-strike clause. You can't cherry pick what parts of the contract work and don't. That was a way to ban BART strikes. It's fair to workers and fair to riders. And I unequivocally oppose BART strikes and will continue to work for them to end. It's too essential service to our community to subject the Bay Area to it, and it's unsafe. And I had a smarter, fairer way to end BART strikes.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, so I'm a BART rider, lived through the BART strike in Orinda, so I know firsthand how it grinded our community to a halt and really prevented us from getting to our jobs. And I'm a professor, I have to be there. I can't work remotely. So it's an issue that's near and dear to my heart. And I think it's so crucial that, 4 years ago we were talking about this and we're no closer to preventing a BART strike. And so we need real solutions to make sure that we're not facing another BART strike, working to prevent the things that are going to cause the BART strike, making sure that we're working in relationship with all the parties so that we don't end up in a BART strike. And so it's crucial that that critical service continues and we have leadership that's able to get us there. But also, as a BART rider, I have to also add that BART is unreliable, unsafe, it is overcrowded every day in and day out. As a BART rider, I see the problems that we face as a transit system. And so there are so many critical things about BART that need to get fixed, and we need to be working on each and every one of them. So we have this public transit system that is working for our communities because it's crucial to our environment and to our quality of life.
Thank you very much. Another labor-related question, and this came in as a email question earlier, not from the audience. Rebecca, do you support or oppose increasing the minimum wage?
So, we've gotten to we're getting to a $15 minimum wage in California, a living wage. I am a supporter of a living wage. California is an expensive place to live. My grandparents came here with nothing. My grandfather started in a factory in Brooklyn, was able to work his way up to salesman and regional salesman. My dad was the first in our family to go to college. Like I said in my opening, we lived the American dream that this country provided through good living wages. And so we need to be working to provide living wages to all of our workers in a way that makes our economy work. But that also means providing training and education so that our workforce has the ability to get into jobs that provide a living wage. We want an economy in California that works for everyone and not just the top percentage, because is going to be what's going to make us a successful state.
Thank you. Katherine?
Thank you. California has, and it's on its way to a $15 an hour minimum wage requirement that's already on the books. And actually, what I think our state needs to do is innovate with the minimum wage in a way that we haven't. And it's a missed opportunity if we don't do it this way. That's to recognize that the cost of living in the Bay Area is very different than the cost of living in Shasta or Trinity County. So we perhaps need to have different minimum wages that are more effective regionally. And also to recognize that different fields and careers that you have, say if you're in waiting tables or working in a restaurant, you might have a more appropriate minimum wage that allows you to recognize you're getting tips every night that equal to $30 an hour, not just $15 an hour. Right now, California has a pretty blunt force instrument and said there's a one-size-fits-all minimum wage. This really keeps us from innovating economically and recognizing the cost of living across the state. And it's a disservice to those with developmental disabilities because I've found for those constituents, they would like to have a different minimum wage to create a better incentive for employers to create opportunity for them. We've got to be more innovative, more flexible. The one-size-fits-all is too rigid.
Thank you very much. This question came in on an email also. It's a personal question from a young high school student. She says she took Roe v. Wade for granted. I'm now worried about how changes in the Supreme Court will affect me and other women in the future. How will you make sure that women's rights are protected in California? Katherine?
My first, yeah. I'm pro-choice. I do believe that abortion needs to remain legal for not only women's health and human dignity, but also for safety in our communities. And I have voted for and co-authored 4 resolutions protecting Roe v. Wade and making sure that we not only protect Roe v. Wade, but we fund Planned Parenthood and other reproductive health centers. That's another way at which sometimes those who are opposing choice try to get at that issue. And I've had a 100% score from Planned Parenthood 2 of the 3 years I've been in the state legislature. I actually authored legislation supported by Planned Parenthood to protect their workers and their employees and their patients from stalking. I did that in my first term. It takes people working on both sides of the aisle to be a voice of reason and fight for this, especially when we always see people dividing into partisan lines. I'm proud of that record, and it's one that I will continue.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Yeah, no, last week was a tough week in America. I mean, I think we saw a body that I have great respect for move towards partisanship in a way that none of us want to see it move, the Supreme Court. And so it is frightening what that means for our future, and it's important that we have states that will protect our values as we face this uncertain future. And so, I am always been and always will be unwavering in my support of women and a woman's right to choose. It's why I'm so proud to be endorsed by both Planned Parenthood and NARAL in this race, and they know that I will stand with women 100% of the time, and that is something that I'm proud of. And we need to do it for a lot of reasons. I don't think anybody thinks that California would ever take away the right to choose here locally, but we need to continue to be a leader in the nation on this issue, providing for education and access to clinics for women as things do change, if they change nationwide. And then, not only is it a health issue, but it's also the greatest equalizer of women in the workforce, is the ability to control your own reproductive future. And so I will stand with women to create that equal workforce and protect their rights no matter what happens.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters does a lot of work on the propositions that turn up on our ballot, and some of them are a little bit confusing. So, Rebecca, do you support Prop 10, which is the rent control change, and why? Why should we vote for it or against it?
So I am a huge believer in local control, especially as it comes to housing. That's something we've seen facing our local community recently with AB 2923 and the question of allowing BART to take over land in our cities and take that away from our local control. And that's something I oppose. I think local cities should be in control of their own building and their own infrastructure. And this is another question of local control. I think it's crucial that we give cities the power to make decisions about what will work for them, for development, and for allowing them to protect their citizens. And so I think that we should give that control back to the cities and allow them to make their own decisions on this issue.
Thank you. Katherine?
I oppose Prop 10. I think it actually will make a housing crisis worse. And here's how. Just about every major economic study where there's been experiments with rent control has shown that it limits housing supply because it creates a significant disincentive to build more housing, particularly rental housing, which is the entryway for people to begin to have home ownership somewhere down the line. Secondly, it leads indisputably to lower quality housing because it's a disincentive for those who have rental housing to do more than the bare minimum to keep it up and to make sure, because they're not going to be able to spread out some of the costs of increasing the quality of that. So it actually makes the problem worse by restricting housing and future construction and making the quality less. Now, what's very, very important on this is the very people who are hoping to be benefiting from this are the ones who are actually likely to suffer. I joined the San Francisco Chronicle, not exactly a right-wing newspaper, in opposing Proposition 10 unequivocally. Just want to make sure that that answer is straightforward and clear, which you deserve.
Thank you very much. What is your position of California being designated as a sanctuary state? We assume there is some litigation in the wind. Do you support the litigation against the federal government or the federal government against us?
Yeah, first. So I want to start with something that I think is so important to our country and our values that it's important to say. I am very supportive of a welcoming immigration policy. It is an American value. It is a moral value. My grandfather came through Ellis Island when Italians were considered subhuman and built a wonderful life out here. And I do believe in a welcoming immigration policy for refugees, and why I have co-sponsored and voted for the legislation to protect access for refugees to our country and to repeal the Muslim ban that the president imposed. And so that's my starting point. I believe it is an important American value. Immigration is very good for our country. I also believe that it doesn't do a good use of our public safety dollars to round up people who are otherwise living here honorably. The sanctuary state status, however, put too many hoops for our law enforcement to jump through in order to focus on people who victimized others. And whether you're a fifth-generation California or you just came to the United States, I want you safe when you're here. And if you're victimizing other people, we need to have you off your streets, and we need to make it possible for law enforcement to do that. I was pleased to support the legislation that prohibits ICE from rounding people up at home, in schools, or in the workplace, but not the sanctuary state bill. That's not good for the state of California. The litigation part is I think that's the right way for cities to determine if they want to challenge it, not through vigilantism. Our court system is how you do that, not through rogue action, breaking the law.
Thank you. Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard a little bit tonight about how my family came to this country as refugees, and so I know firsthand the values of this nation and this community, and that we are a country built on immigrants. And that is something I value, and it's why when the Muslim ban came down, I stepped up and I coordinated the legal response at SFO, because I know the values that we stand for as a country, and the zero tolerance policies of this administration are not the values that we share in this community, in this state, or in this country. And so I stand in strong opposition to them. And so for a couple reasons, I think that it's important that California took the stand to say we would not allow California resources to be used in those zero tolerance policies. Because when this president decided to separate children from their parents at the border, I didn't want California's resources being used in that effort. I think that's not who we are and what we stand for, and so I stand with that. But I also would add that having worked in the criminal justice field, it makes us safer for people in our community to be in relationship with police officers when they're victims of domestic violence, when they have a firearm stolen from their home. We need to make sure people feel safe working with our police officers, and so that's another interest in this.
Thank you very much. Now, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our time. It did go fast. And I apologize if I didn't ask your question, because there are many more questions here. They're very good questions from the audience. So if the candidates can, and you have a question for a candidate, if you could stay a little late, that would be nice.
Absolutely.
As long as the library doesn't close.
Or the air
Oh, the library's
doesn't get
closing.
to
You may have to move into the parking lot. Now, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement, and we will begin with Katherine Baker.
Thank you. That 1 minute goes by fast, and so did the evening. So yes, I would be very honored to get to visit with you about more questions. If you don't get to ask one, my website has my phone number and my email. I do respond to questions, usually just in a couple of days, and I'd be honored to receive them. I also put my ballot statement and my full detailed vote record on my website on many of the issues tonight, as well as others. And I think it's important as you're researching your ballot to visit that. I would say there's going to be areas where my opponent and I will disagree on policy. I bet there are some where we agree. There's two key areas that are important to focus on in this race. Bipartisanship. I'm the only candidate in this race with a bipartisan record. The Sacramento Bee found that I had the most bipartisan record of any assembly member in the state legislature in my first term. And I'm the only one that has endorsements from Democrats, independents, and Republicans, because that is what I am all about. It makes us much more effective and gets better work done. And the second is honesty. You're going to hear a lot in the coming weeks about positions and so on. Contact me if you have any questions. But I'm honored to have the East Bay Times endorsement. To quote them, Baker is the superior and more honest candidate, and I deserve re-election. I will work hard every day to earn it, and I hope I can earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca Bauer-Kahan.
Yes, thank you all for being here. 1 minute, I don't know that I even got to answer all the questions when they were asked, so thank you for listening. And again, please reach out if you have additional questions. You can find me easily online at RebeccaForAssembly.com. It has all the contact information and ways to find me, and I would love to continue to engage on all of these issues and more. It's been a pleasure to talk about these issues. You know, I'm so happy to be running to represent us and our values and make sure that we're well represented in Sacramento, both on our values, the things that all of us share that we talked about, battling climate change, using my environmental legal background to really be at the forefront of that, and then also the values that we share on gun violence prevention, a woman's right to choose, and all the other things that are so important. I'm proud to have some wonderful endorsements behind me from NARAL, Planned Parenthood, Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom, Congressman DeSaulnier, and others, and I invite you to look at my website for more of that. But, you know, I'm here just to represent this community and make sure that we have what we need as we face the uncertain future that all of us are facing. And I have nothing to hide. I'm proud of who I am and what I've done. And if you have any questions, please come to me. I want you to decide who will represent you best and hold us accountable in elections. That's what this is all about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the Contra Costa Libraries, the Elections Department, and CCTV for co-sponsoring tonight's forum. And I want to thank all of you for your respectful attention and great questions. And I especially want to thank the candidates who've offered their service, their ideas, and their commitment. Be sure to vote on November 6th.
Thank you.
Right on. Good job, Ann.
Yeah, great job, Ann.